This is disc number 7.
Jack. 3 months ago. It was time to wash the car. I could have taken it to a drive-through place, but for obvious reasons, I opted to do it myself. It was a bright blue sunny day, but my mood was so overcast I barely noticed. Scrubbing the bumpers with the stiff yellow sponge, I had a bit of a Lady Macbeth moment. Out, damn spot, out, as I attacked not just any physical remnants of our dastardly deed, but my guilt and shame along with them. I swirled the soapy liquid across the hood. I tried not to think of how things ended for the troubled lady, or how my fall from grace might be equally inevitable. Newton's third law of motion, what goes up must come down, certainly had ominous implications. You see it all too many times in the movie business. Young actors coming into sudden fame, then a few short years later overdosing, slitting their wrists, sucking on a tailpipe. We blame the media for prying into their lives. We blame their families for failing to support and love them. We blame their so-called friends for glomming on to their newfound fame, asking too much, making them feel used. But maybe it's simpler than that. Maybe these poor souls implode because they are thrust into a realm that's not meant for them. Maybe they were meant to live modest lives. Maybe they were meant to spend their lives striving but not arriving. Maybe fame and fortune was not their true destiny. They just don't belong, like land animals thrust into the sea. Do people have a destiny? And what happens if their intended path is interrupted, upset by an unintended gift, or the loss of a gift meant for them? As I flipped the wipers up to squeegee the windshield, I wondered if I was making a terrible mistake, thrusting Holly Kendrick into a realm not known to her. Does she belong there? Is her soul meant to be suddenly and unexpectedly thrown into lavishness? I thought about what I was doing to her, forcing my brand of comfort and riches upon her. Am I upsetting the natural order of things, and how will it end? And what am I doing to my son by abruptly severing his trajectory and putting him on a vastly different path than he was destined to follow? I thought I would never know the answers to these questions. I thought they were machinations of my guilt and doubt. But I was wrong. The answers were coming, and they were exactly as bad as I feared. Chapter 36. We smelled the fire before we saw it. I assumed it was a distant brush fire. We had so many this time of year. I even said a silent prayer that it was minor and that no one had been hurt. But then Evan turned onto Holly's street, and panic pierced a hole through my heart. Good God, I heard myself say, as Evan leaned on the accelerator and we shot up to the curb. Stay in the car, he barked as he jumped out of the driver's seat and ran up the lawn. There was a man already at the front door, shouting and banging on it with both fists. Evan called to him as he whipped out his phone and used it to open the garage. As they ducked under the lumbering door, I saw Holly's Lexus SUV, the one Evan had picked out and hand-delivered to her, parked inside. If her car was here, she was home. I felt a surge of panic as I unclicked my seatbelt and ran in after them. It was unthinkable that my son might have had something to do with this. So why am I thinking it? Holly! Holly! I heard Evan calling from somewhere ahead of me. I had seen pictures of this house, but had never been inside it. I didn't know the layout. For a moment, I was frozen, unsure where to go. Savannah! It was a different voice, the man from the front porch. He was coming out of what looked like an office, then ran ahead of me and disappeared from sight. I jogged straight ahead. A staircase appeared in front of me. Smoke curled down it like a snake. I'm going upstairs, I called out, not waiting for a response, as I covered my mouth with the inside of my collar and took the stairs two at a time. It was hot below, but upstairs it was sweltering. If I died here today, I wondered if I'd be remembered as a hero or an idiot. I shook off the thought as I peeked into the girls' room, then the bedroom next to it. Both were empty. "Jack, wait!" Evan called after me, and I could hear his heavy footsteps coming on hard. I could see flames now licking the walls of the bedroom at the end of the hall. Against all self-preservation instincts, I lowered my head and charged toward it. Evan caught up to me at the threshold. I had no idea what I would find. My head spun with the possibilities. Where is my son? Has he been here? Is he still here? Am I too late? Smoke burned my eyes as I scanned the room. The fire was everywhere, devouring the drapes, the bed frame, the walls. It was literally hell on earth. I was about to turn back when Evan grabbed my arm. "There," he shouted, pointing to a door with a nightstand pushed up against it. It took me a second to understand what a nightstand was doing in front of a closed door. I got a sick feeling as I realized it was barricading it. Someone was in there. And someone wanted to make sure they didn't get out. Evan and I bolted toward the barricaded door. Above and all around us, wood beams and drywall were crackling and buckling into themselves. Embers swirled with rage. I was already so hot I didn't notice a smoldering ember had landed on my arm. "Your sleeve!" Evan yelled as he clamped his bare hands around the burning cloth. I shook him off and dropped to the ground, extinguishing the flames with my body weight. I crawled to where Evan was pulling at the nightstand, then rolled onto my back and used my legs to help push. The nightstand slid clear of the door, and in a few seconds we had it open, and I saw the inevitable result of what I'd done to this family. The shame I felt was as suffocating as the smoke-filled air. "Holly!" Evan cried out, then fell to his knees. I watched as his two fingers probed her neck for a pulse. "She's alive." I had to step over Holly's legs to reach the girl who was hanging off a clothing rod by her wrists. I forced myself not to ask myself what kind of monster was capable of this, because the answer would cripple me. "Oh my God, Savannah!" the stranger's voice called out, and in an instant he was beside me. I did a double take when I saw his face. Do I know him? "We need to lift her up to unbind her wrists," the man said. I took in his dimpled cheeks and pale blue eyes. He was definitely familiar, but I still couldn't place his face. I wrapped my arms around the girl's slender midsection and hoisted her up on wobbly legs. As the man loosened the leather belt around her wrists, I glanced down at his shoes. Shiny Chuck Taylors. And I immediately knew. This good Samaritan helping save not just this poor girl, but also my rotten soul, was the investigative reporter whose script I'd just optioned. "Almost got it," he said, working the supple leather belt with determined fingers. Of course, I knew that belt, too, because I had bought it for my son. His name was engraved in the buckle. The bill of sale was probably still in my wallet. Tears welled up from the deep recess of my heart, mingling with the ones caused by the stinging smoke and heat. "Mom?" the girl murmured, and I held her tight. "Your mom is okay," I soothed. "We're going to get you out of here." Evan was carrying Holly fireman style out the door as the belt dropped to the ground and the girl's arms flopped free. "Let's go," Andy barked as I remembered his name. He lifted Savannah in his arms. "Jack, come on!" And of course he remembered mine. I looked down at my son's belt with its monogrammed buckle, clearly linking it to him. "Don't," Andy said sharply, and I spun to look at him. "You've held the secret long enough." My breath caught in my chest. I didn't have time to wonder what my shrewd new investigative reporter colleague had pieced together. I couldn't ask how and when he'd figured it out, or what the hell I would do about that. Answers to those questions would come later. What I did know in that moment was that he was absolutely right. That secret had ravaged all our lives. It was time to set it free. I looked back down at my son's one-of-a-kind belt, and I left it there.
Epilogue. 3 months later. Holly. I woke up to see snow falling, sifting down onto emerald green grass. The first and last time I saw snow was on our family trip to Big Bear. Savannah was 3, and she was absolutely charmed by it. As it swirled down from an infinite gray sky, she turned her little Cupid doll face up to greet it, opening her mouth to catch it on her tongue, then flapping her arms like a bird as if inviting it to play with her. Seeing her so completely delighted is one of my favorite memories of our time with Gabe. I was too caught in the moment to take any pictures that day, except in my mind, where the memory lives swirled with feelings of sadness and loss. I remember thinking snow-covered trees were the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. I loved how the fluffy white confection balanced on the branches, like thick frosting on coffee-colored ladyfingers. Everything dark and dirty was hidden, at least for the moment, and the blur of pure white heaven made me feel peaceful and free. Evan saw me staring out our bedroom window and touched my face. He said it was a good thing I liked snow, because it snowed a lot here in New Hampshire. He had bought Savannah and me poofy parkas and cozy fur-lined boots, even before we had decided to move here, and they quickly became our daily uniform. It took some getting used to, having to bundle up every time we went outside, but it made coming home to the warmth of our cabin in the woods that much nicer. I never thought I would love again. But who does when they marry their high school sweetheart? My feelings for Evan were not that urgent, hungry kind of love, but they anchored me, and my heart felt full and safe. I never in a million years imagined I would move all the way across the country to escape my past. But now that we were here, it made perfect sense. I would never forget my husband and the life we had shared. But the woman who married him was gone now, like a tiny boat swept away by a storm. I still carried her memories, of course, and her secrets. They jangled around in the pockets of my new life, gently reminding me that not all debts can be paid with money, but taking someone's money always leaves you in debt. They also reminded me to go forward in gratitude, because I got my second chance, my emerald forest, with the one man who could know the real me, secrets and all, and I wasn't going to waste it.
Evan. The first thing I did was quit my job. My letter to Jack was short and to the point. Effective immediately, I will no longer serve as your personal attorney. I wrote it on my phone from a chair next to Holly's hospital bed, where I stayed until I convinced her to come live with me by the beach. It wasn't romantic, not at first. I worked hard to win her love. I knew I couldn't do it with things. She'd had enough of shiny new things. I would have to find another way. I started by giving her the spare room in my condo for her and Savannah to share. No frills and no strings attached. I no longer worked for Jack, so I made it my job to tend to their needs, getting up at 5 to drive Savannah to school, keeping the fridge stocked with their favorite foods, then leaving them alone to eat when they pleased. About a month into our arrangement, I came home to a table set for 3. Holly often cooked, a lasagna or beef stew which she would cover with tinfoil and leave on the stove. But until that day, she had never invited me to sit with them, and I'd never asked. But that night, they waited. We ate family style, which I hadn't done since I was a kid, passing clear bowls of salad and vegetables back and forth across the table, serving ourselves until we were full. After dinner, she asked me to go for a walk with her. As we stepped into the cool night air, she reached for my hand, and as I wrapped my fingers around her palm, I was careful not to squeeze too hard. As we walked, she told me she had never been with anyone but her husband. She said it like an apology, and I told her we could take it slow or not at all. She didn't owe me anything. And then she turned to face me, wrapped her hands around my neck, and went on tippy toes to kiss me. I tried not to seem too eager as I kissed her back, putting a gentle hand on her waist, but resisting the urge to pull her into me. That would come later that night, after she came to my room wearing nothing but a t-shirt, which she left by the door as I pulled back my sheet and made room for her beside me. She apologized for not knowing what to do next, so I showed her. She cried a little after and apologized for that, too. I thought she might leave, but she didn't. I didn't hold her as she slept, but she was touching my arm when I woke up. And when I kissed her good morning, she kissed me back. Then she asked about New Hampshire and said she would like to see it sometime. I didn't know if she wanted to go to learn more about me or escape what she knew about herself. I imagine it was both. We flew across the country on Savannah's Thanksgiving break and never left. We don't tell people the story of how we met. Through friends is our go-to response. She forgave me for subjugating her life to protect another, and I would spend the rest of my life working to forgive myself. I know from the outside it may look like I saved her, and in some ways I did. But she also saved me.
Andy. I got my $1 million. 2 weeks after the fire, Jack Kimball exercised the option on my script, and by Thanksgiving the full amount had landed in my bank account. A start date for filming was set for spring. Once people heard that I was in business with Jack Kimball, my phone started ringing and still hasn't stopped. Hollywood is funny like that. I didn't become a better writer after selling a script to Jack, yet suddenly all the producers who had passed on my scripts were lining up to buy one. Getting my name printed next to Jack's in the trade papers transformed me from an outsider to an insider, and any door I wanted to walk through was opened for me with a hearty, "Come on in." I'm a little embarrassed to admit the scandal around Jack's family turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to my career. What is it they say about publicity? That it's all good, even the bad stuff? After Jack's son got arrested when young love turned to fiery rage, Jack's name was everywhere, and mine along with it. You'd think being linked to arson and attempted murder would scare people away, but this is Hollywood. Being talked about is more marketable than being decent, and Jack Kimball was suddenly the most talked about man in town. But that's not why I never wrote the story. Because of course I knew the truth. The look on Jack's face when my fingers found the tender engraving on his son's belt confirmed everything I'd come to suspect. That it was Logan, all along, and Jack had done what any father would do to protect his son. A search of public court documents confirmed what I suspected about Evan. He was the attorney of record for Jack on more than a handful of cases. I never did buy that he and Holly were lovers, though I wasn't surprised to learn that's how they wound up. Tragedy has a way of bringing people together, especially when it's born from a treacherous secret. And I guess I carry that secret too, now. But keeping secrets is not new to me. As an investigative journalist, I'd kept lots of secrets. Torrid affairs, identities of whistleblowers, evidence that would have put many a man in jail had my sources allowed me to disclose it. Perhaps that's why I wanted out of that sordid business. I was good at keeping people's secrets. I had to be. Having tight lips was a job requirement. And many of those secrets were orders of magnitude worse than the one I was holding now. Of course there were reasons to tell, but there were more reasons not to. After many years of suffering, my wife was happy. Going public with the story would expose our family to all sorts of unwanted attention, and like Jack, I had a duty to protect Libby and the girls. Plus, I had compassion for Holly. Outing her would rip her life apart, and she did not deserve that. Logan had been incarcerated and was no longer a threat. I had nothing to gain by exposing them, but I did have something to lose. I'll never know why Jack put my movie into production, if it was worthy or if he feared what I'd do if he didn't. But I didn't agonize over it, because I was in the club now, and I would have plenty of chances to prove I belonged there. Would the story come out? A good investigative reporter could surely write a dazzler. But I'm a big-time screenwriter now, so it's not going to be me.
Savannah. They blamed it all on me. Jealous boyfriend burns down girlfriend's house, the headlines read. Apparently teen romance erupts in flames explained everything. Anybody who's read Romeo and Juliet knows that young people in love do crazy-ass shit. Nobody suspected there was a whole nother layer to this tragic tale, and hopefully never would. Logan was already staring down indictments for arson and attempted murder. No way he would want to add hit and run to his rap sheet. And I sure as hell wasn't going to tell anyone. My room didn't burn, but all my stuff stank so bad like smoke I had to throw it away. Which was fine, because I didn't want it. Not anymore. I'll go to college, get a job, and buy my own Louis Vuitton. That's the way Dad would have wanted it, because that's the only way it would ever be truly mine. I deleted the video. Now that police were digging around our house, aka the crime scene, I didn't want any loose ends around for them to find. Mom got the insurance money. It wasn't the same as having a bottomless bank account, but we wouldn't starve. Honestly, after nearly being set on fire, I was happy just to still be alive. After it came out that my track coach tried to burn my house down with me in it, school got a little awkward. I never really liked that school anyway. I wasn't a Calabasas girl with bouncy hair and rounded edges. But I wasn't a dark-eyed chica from Van Nuys either. I didn't know if I would find my tribe in New Hampshire, but at least I wouldn't be the girl whose dad died, or the girl whose boyfriend tried to kill her. I could, for the first time in my life, just be me. And I liked that idea. Moving to New Hampshire was a chance to start over. Again. Hopefully for the last time.
Libby. Obviously, we had to move. I couldn't have my daughter staring out at that charred tangle of 2x4s across the street from us every day. Margot was already nervous at night. I started looking the second the check cleared. We would get new construction this time, something closer to the studios so my husband could get to his meetings without any stress. I had reservations about Andy staying in business with Jack after what his son did to that poor family. But the script was under contract, and we had bills to pay, whether or not the family was crazy. And the fact is, we don't know what happened. Not really. I liked Holly and tried to be her friend, but whatever bizarro arrangement she had made with Jack Kimball was none of my business. It was wrong of me to poke around in her private life. It's not like I had been living in integrity myself. I would have gone to see them, but Holly and Savannah never came back to the house, not even to retrieve their things. As I peered out Margot's window at the house, with its sunken roof and blackened walls, I wonder if my house burned, what would I take? Surely I'd come back for my jewelry, not just because it's valuable, but because it's meaningful to me. Much of it was inherited. It connects me to my ancestors, my past, who I am today. I'd want my wedding dress, not to wear it again, but for the memories woven into the fabric. I'd want my favorite books, for the notes written in the margins that show the evolution of my thoughts. And of course, I'd take anything framed, Photos, diplomas, awards, babies' footprints, to remind me of the milestones that had shaped our lives. I hate when people dismiss the loss of an object because it's just a thing. Things are important. They give comfort, shelter, style, identity. The sum total of your things is a roadmap of your life. They show where you've been, what you accomplished, who you loved, who loved you back. They are an expression of who you are. You can learn a lot about a person by their things. Material things are not what's most important in life, of course. There is nothing that makes me happier than my child's laughter or her hand holding mine. But anyone who says they would not cry if they lost their childhood blankie or their wedding ring or the house they grew up in is either lying or a saint. I remembered Holly's suicide attempt and the cocoon of sadness that followed her around that house. It suddenly occurred to me that maybe she never wanted a Bosch oven or a Baccarat chandelier. They certainly didn't make her happy. I thought about how I contorted myself to live in this crumbling house, how unhappy I had been without things that were familiar to me, how far away from myself I had felt. Perhaps Holly and I were the same after all. Both of us had been living a lie. And now, we both were where we belonged.
Jack. Acting is all about finding truth in made-up situations. I know that seems like a paradox. That's why it's hard. An actor's job is to be completely honest while pretending to be someone else, in a place that's dressed up to look like somewhere else, while telling a story that isn't true. A good actor is a master of deception. Sometimes we get lost in the role, and the line between what's real and what's imagined gets blurred. I've never fallen in love with a co-star, but I understand why it happens. If you're really good at pretending to be in love with someone, sometimes you fool even yourself. My son was not an actor, but when the press decided that he burned that girl's house down because he was mad with jealousy, he played the part. They made it easy for him because even his denials were seen as proof that, of course, it was true. The boy doth protest too much. But there was one person who didn't believe the narrative. His mother. She knew our son too well. She had felt his indifference about the girl. She didn't buy what the press was selling. I don't think he was in love with that girl, she told me as they hauled him off to jail. He didn't act like a boy in love. She asked me if I believed it or if there was more to the story. I was tempted to lie, but I knew that even with all my acting training, I couldn't. Not to her. I didn't know how to play myself in a made-up story. She knew my process. She would see my tells. There was no way to hide the truth, not from her. I told her on a Sunday, and she was packed and gone by Monday. My son was in jail, Evan had resigned, and for the first time in my life, I was completely alone. I didn't have a big bottle of Vicodin lying around, but there were other ways to do what Holly had done, and if I'd had the courage, I might have tried them. I thought about Holly a lot those first few weeks as I slept anywhere but in my bedroom and ate standing at the kitchen counter to avoid seeing Kate's empty place. I was mortified that I'd tried to bury this woman's grief by gifting her a dream house. I knew now it was preposterous to think a princess would want to live in the castle without her prince, and that I was cruel to have suggested it. A week into my sequestration, a man in a suit came to my door. I assumed it was the law and readied myself to get carted off to jail. But it wasn't a policeman. It was the attorney Evan had hired to represent my son. I nearly wept at the kindness of the gesture. After everything I'd put him through, he still had my back. In that moment, I knew definitively I hadn't deserved him, and felt genuinely relieved that he'd finally left me. I had thought the press would drag me through the mud, but in the end, they probably saved my life, because they wrote their own version of the story. That my son was ill, my wife was heartless, I was the victim. My fan base was energized. People all over the world sent messages of love and support. Rather than plummet, my star rose to new heights. The studio begged me to make a movie. I had a script that I liked under option, written by an investigative reporter I'd be wise to keep busy, so I agreed. My days are a whirlwind of prepping and scouting and putting the movie together now. I am as busy as a shovel in a blizzard, but thoughts of Holly still leak through. The nights are the hardest, but whiskey helps, and I have something stronger when the whiskey's not enough. And when the time comes to shoot the movie, I'll get to pretend to be someone else for a while, just as Holly did, with borrowed costumes, a new haircut, and a fake backstory to complete the masquerade. The movie will end, as all fake lives do, and, like Holly, I'll return to myself. And, like Holly, I will continue to grieve. Yes, Holly's grief reeks with the permanence of death, but mine carries the stench of shame and regret, which is just as relentless and tastes just as sour. If loss could be measured, I think Holly and I both got our fair share. Death is worse than divorce, but Holly's daughter, a willful accomplice, roams free while my son sits behind prison bars. And my most trusted friend has defected from my home to hers. Has justice been served? Have we been returned to equilibrium and balance restored? If the dead man could speak, would he say we all got what we deserved? I look to my tattered heart for the answer. But like my life, my heart has been ravaged. I peer inside only to find it is barren, broken, as good as dead.
We hope you have enjoyed our presentation of Good as Dead by Susan Walter. Performed by Kimberly Woods, Suzanne Elise Freeman, James Anderson Foster, Selah Victor, Jack Turner, and Seth Podowitz. Performance copyright 2021 by Brilliance Publishing, Inc., all rights reserved. For further information concerning this program or other Brilliance audio titles, please visit our website at www.brilliancepublishing.com. No part of this recording may be played for an audience or reproduced in any form. It may not be streamed, downloaded, broadcast, or copied without written permission. Address all inquiries to Brilliance Audio, P.O. Box 887, Grand Haven, Michigan 49417,